All right, let's look at AKS 17 test. Question 1 says, opposite angles of a parallelogram are congruent. So if you were to look at your property sheet, that is one of the properties that is true of parallelograms, that they're opposite angles. So these two right here are congruent, or you've also got the other opposites as well. So that's true. 2 says, determine if the following statement is true or false. Opposite angles of a square are supplementary. Well, with a square, we know that all angles are 90 degrees. So the opposites are both 90. If I sum those, add them together, 90 plus 90 is 180. And that is the definition of supplementary, that they add to 180. So that is true. Question 3, adjacent sides of a rectangle are parallel. Well, here's a rectangle. Adjacent sides means the ones next to each other. So these two would be adjacent. They can't be parallel because they intersect at this point. So this is false. Now, what are they actually? Well, remember a rectangle has right angles. So adjacent sides are actually perpendicular in a rectangle. All right, next one, classify the quadrilateral SYDN as specifically as possible. So I'm going to start by just drawing a quadrilateral. You can have it however you want. We don't know what type it is yet. And we're going to label it around SYDN all the way around. Now, let's label the information we're given. We're given that SY is parallel to DN, and that SY is congruent to DN. So what we know is that opposite sides are parallel and are congruent. And therefore, we know that this must be a parallelogram. In this next one, we have a picture of a parallelogram because opposite sides are parallel. And one of the properties we know is that if two sides are consecutive in a parallelogram, that means they're right next to each other, consecutive angles are supplementary. So that's what we're going to use to solve this. Because they're supplementary, I want to add them together, so 5x plus 1 plus 3x plus 11, and set it equal to 180. All right, so now I'm going to simplify this. I want to start by combining like terms, so 5x plus 3x is 8x, and then 1 plus 11 is 12, equals 180. And now I'm going to start the solving process. The first thing I'm going to do is subtract 12 from both sides. So over here we bring down the 8x. 12 minus 12 is 0. And 180 minus 12 is 168. Next thing I would do is divide both sides by 8. And we get x equals 21. There we go. All right, in this next one, we're solving for x and we're solving for the side length of WE. So I notice that I have the opposite sides in this parallelogram. This is a parallelogram because all sides are congruent, and I know information about these two sides. We know that opposite sides in a parallelogram are congruent. And so since they are congruent, I will set them equal. So 2x plus 9 equals 4x minus 5. I'm going to draw my solving line and start the solving process. So the first thing I want to do is move the x's together. And I'll start by moving the smallest x. So I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides. 2x minus 2x is 0. Bring down the 9. 4x minus 2x is 2x. Bring down that minus 5. Now I'm going to try to get everything away from x. So I'm going to add the 5 over to the other side. I get 14 equals 2x. And the last thing I'm going to do is to get x by itself, divide both sides by 2. 7 equals x. All right, so we have found x. Now we want to find side WE. WE is this side here, which is represented by this expression. So to find it, I'm going to take the expression 2x plus 7, and now I'm 2x plus 9, and now I'm plugging in 7 for x. So see, I've just replaced x with 7, and I'm going to simplify to find the length. So 2 times 7 is 14. 14 plus 9 is 23. So WE is 23. All right, the next one says to find x and then find PN. Now, in this picture right here, we are given a rectangle. And we know that it's a rectangle because the 4 corners are perpendicular, which means that opposite sides are parallel and congruent. One thing that we know to be true about rectangles is that the rectangle's diagonals are congruent to each other and they bisect each other. And so what happens is all of the pieces of the diagonals end up being congruent to each other. And that's what we're going to use to solve this. Since PH and HH, oh no, let's just label this as F. Since PH and HF are congruent, I can set them equal. So 4x plus 7 equals 6x minus 1. And now I'm going to solve. So I'm going to subtract 4x over first. And that's 0. Bring down the 7 equals 2x minus 1. Next thing I'm going to do is add 1 over. So 8 equals 2x. And last thing I'm going to do is divide both sides by 2. So 4 equals x. Now that I've found 4 for x, I can plug that in to find one of the lengths. So maybe I'll plug it into this one right here, the 6x minus 1. So 6 times 4 minus 1. 6 times 4 is 24. Minus 1 is 23. And that tells me that not only this length is 23, but all 4 of them are 23. Now what we want to find is PN. So PN is the length of the whole diagonal. Well, I just have to add the pieces, 23 plus 23, and I see that it's equal to 46. All right, question 8 here. I have this picture, which is a rhombus because opposite sides are, or all 4 sides are congruent. And one of the properties we know about the rhombus is that its diagonal bisects the angle, the angles. And so if you remember, bisects means it cuts it in half perfectly. So that means that it bisects it into 2 congruent angles. So I know that these 2 pieces are congruent. So in order to solve, I'm going to set them equal. So 3x plus 17 equals 6x minus 22. As I'm solving this, first thing I'm going to do is move the smaller x. So that would be the 3x. I'm going to subtract it over. So I get 17 equals 3x minus 22. Now I'm going to add 22 over. So 39 equals 3x. Next, we're going to divide both sides by 3. And I get 13 equals x. So 13 would be your answer for blank number 1. But now blank number 2 says find the measure of angle CHR. And we want to be careful about what we're being asked to find. Trace it with me. C to H to R is the whole angle, not just one of the pieces. So I'm going to go ahead and start by just plugging 13 into one of these angles. I'm going to do this one. So 3 times 13 plus 17. 3 times 13 is 39. Plus 17 is 56. And now I know that they're both equal, so I don't actually have to plug it in on the other side, but you always could to check your work if you wanted. And so to find the whole, I just have to add the pieces. 56 plus 56 is 112. And so 112 degrees would be our answer for the measure of angle CHR.